Chapter 15 of The Beautiful Mrs. Davenant by Violet Tweedale. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 15. Warburton's Advice. So you'll meet here in future, and that will be delightful, and what I've always wished for. They had drawn round the fire after a very cheery lunch, and Mrs. Davenant and Agnes Howard had listened with the most flattering interest to the story the lovers unfolded. Outside, the daylight had already begun to fade away into a pale primrose west, and Hilda Davenant switched on a light by her chair. "Come here to me, little Letty," she said softly. Letty Thorne knelt beside her chair. "I would come to you from the farthest ends of the earth," she declared. "I don't know why you should be so wonderfully kind to us," she went on, and her voice was touched by deep emotion. "If only every woman in the world was like you, what a different place it would be!" "God forbid!" There was sudden tragedy in the low exclamation, but Letty continued determinedly. "It's difficult to think of you and so many others as of the same species. You who do not even seem to know what unkindness means." Mrs. Davenant looked suddenly serious, almost sad. "What? I?" she exclaimed. "Oh, but I assure you, I am often very unkind indeed. But what I called you for was this." She fastened a single row of pearls around Letty's throat. "To give a string of pretty beads to a good little girl. There, child, that is my gift to you upon your engagement becoming known to all and sundry." Letty turned pale. She knew the gift was of great value, and she was stricken by an emotion which could find no expression in words. She sank down in a little heap on the floor, and stared at the beautiful smiling face above her, which owed nothing to art. The plain black velvet dress Hilda Davenant wore enhanced the purity of her skin, and the lovely throat where the single string of pearls had been was perfect in contour. To a girl, Hilda was an absorbing study. "Can't say anything. It's no use trying," Letty burst out vehemently. "Hilda will be infinitely relieved to hear that," laughed Agnes, who was watching the little scene with eloquent eyes. Mrs. Davenant bent and kissed the girl. "There, I've got my thanks," she smiled, rising and moving to the window. "Oh, I see Mr. Warburton coming up the drive. Let us discuss the thrilling subject of your engagement with him. He's so practical and sympathetic." Sunny, cheery Harry readily fell in with the suggestion. He was the embodiment of youth. It was impossible to look at him without feeling young again oneself. The well-knit, vigorous frame, the clear, laughing eyes drew people instinctively towards him, and made him very attractive. "By all means," he agreed. "There's no secret I wouldn't tell him, but our secret is now to be made public, so let's start with the parson." Warburton entered with his usual cheerfulness. He was master of himself now, when in Agnes Howard's presence. He had dictated to himself a fortnight's banishment, during which he had worked hard in his parish and turned things over constantly in his mind. The vicar knew that the two foes to human happiness are pain and boredom, and that the less a man has to do, the more he will magnify his own troubles. Though he longed intensely to see the woman he loved, he held resolutely aloof, until he had formulated some plan to guide his future procedure. After all, the plan resolved itself into letting things slide. Gossip was now rife in Great Glentworth, and Warburton, though he sternly discouraged it in his own house, was often forced to listen to it in the houses of others. His sister had told him the simple story of Miss Howard's love affair in the past, and it had raised his hopes immeasurably. Agnes had wished him to be told, and he felt her confidence in him augured well for the future. She was in any case free to accept or reject his offer, should he decide to make it. Meanwhile, he resolved to school himself to silence and wait on fate, and Emily had contributed to this determination. She had said, "I almost despair of your ever marrying now, Ambrose, but Agnes Howard is the type of woman I would have loved for a sister-in-law. A woman who would be a wife to you and a friend to me." He had replied evasively, and treated her words lightly. He saw that she had no suspicion of his feelings towards Agnes, and he was glad, because hope and fear so constantly alternated in his heart. Though he believed there was no impediment against his marrying Miss Howard, he could not conceive of her ever caring for him sufficiently to become his wife. "I will wait as patiently as I can, and be guided by circumstances," he told himself, and straightway resumed his habit of intimacy with the ladies of Little Glentworth. "Sitting round the fire as if there was a foot of snow on the ground, and with no coal to be got, and wood at a premium," he protested with mock horror, as he shook hands all round. "It's clearing up outside, and there's going to be a lovely sunset, and I've just heard the music of the hounds in the distance, and doubtless the master will be dropping in for tea." "Don't be tiresome," retorted Hilda. "Don't I diligently gather up the fir cones every day, and the master will be too muddy to turn in. Come and sit down, and congratulate Letty and Harry upon their engagement." The parson laughed. "Oh, I've done that privately ever so long ago, but I'm delighted to do it again in public. Bless you both. Long life, and may every joy that love can give be yours." Letty coloured vividly, and murmured her thanks inaudibly, but she looked up at him and smiled, and he thought her very pretty as she stood there, a tall, slender creature, with the play of firelight and shadow over her delicately cut face and eloquent eyes. Harry, looking very big and proud and happy, clasped the friendly hand extended to him. "We would like to tell you how it came about that we were so secretive," he said, when they were once more seated round the fire. "You see, for no reason that we could make out, Letty's aunt, Miss Thorne, objected to our engagement, so we had to meet by stealth. Unfortunately, I haven't enough money to marry on at once, but next year I will have enough. You see, sir, the war threw me out, and I had to begin all over again, so to speak." Warburton nodded. "Yes, I quite see. I know how many lads had to sacrifice their professions for the sake of their country." "Oh, you darling," thought Hilda, as she sat silently listening. "How irresistibly attractive his simplicity and his youth and his good looks are." "To-day," went on Harry, "we were surprised down by the lake by the sudden appearance of Geoffrey Thorpe." "Geoffrey Thorpe? Why, I thought he never went out," ejaculated Warburton in amazement. "No more he does. That's what we calculated upon," went on Harry eagerly. "He's never been known to go out for years and years, yet there he stood, scowling at us by the summer-house door." "Oh, most disconcerting it must have been," laughed Agnes. Harry had to laugh too. "It was, I can assure you, especially when he forbade our engagement in very harsh language. Letty played up like a brick. We both assured him we intended to get married unless the sky fell in, and he went off in a towering rage, vowing we'd get nothing from him. Just as if we wanted his wretched money," went on Harry with fine scorn. "Why, half the beauty of our marriage will be that all the time I'll be working like a Trojan for Letty. I'm young and strong, and I love my work." "Oh, you'll win out all right, my boy, never fear. But how will this affect Miss Thorne's stay at the lake house? Won't it be rather unpleasant for her now?" "Exactly what I feel," chimed in Agnes. "Letty had better stay here. In any case, we want her and Harry to spend Christmas with us." Harry was looking anxious. The same thought had occurred to him, and was worrying him more than he cared to own. But he brightened up at Miss Howard's suggestion. "You've both been such angels of goodness to us that no new and enchanting proposition sounds in the least strange. I'm like my Letty, quite bereft of words to express our gratitude," said Harry, with a grave earnestness that sat strangely on his merry young face. Warburton said nothing, but silently watched Agnes with a very bright look, grave, yet in a way shining. How wonderful, he thought, were those two women in their strangely human interest. It had not been his experience to find women of that type so sympathetic to young lovers. Certainly the hateful gossip that raged around their names was wholly opposed to such characteristics, even did it contain a modicum of truth. "I must go back to the lake house, no matter what sort of reception I get," said Letty thoughtfully. "It is possible that uncle may turn me out, in which case I would most thankfully avail myself of the shelter and welcome offered to me here, but somehow I don't think his attitude on my return will be different to what it has been. If only his behaviour towards me was my only difficulty, I really wouldn't have much to contend with."
"Ah, then there is something else. Is it anything that you can tell us, Miss Thorne? Remember what warm friends you are amongst."
The girl's whole expression had suddenly changed. The look she threw round the absorbed faces watching her was full of fear. Her eyes were arrested as they met her lover's puzzled gaze, and he saw entreaty in them.
"Yes, darling, you may say anything here. Much better be quite frank, and doubtless we can help you," he urged gently.
Letty shook her head emphatically. "Alas, no, Harry. No one can help me, and you'll all think me ridiculously foolish when you hear that my great trouble is the ghost. I have to live with it and endure it constantly. There is some horrible secret connected with the lake house. No one could doubt it after living there a week. I can't explain what it is, because I don't know. But there is a constant haunting presence which is terrifying." No one spoke. Amazement was on every face, and Harry stared at the girl with an expression of mingled incredulity, anxiety, and blank astonishment. He had been totally unprepared for such a disclosure. Warburton was the first to speak and break the silence. He noted how absolutely in earnest Letty was, and his voice was no less serious than her own.
"Is it something you see?"
"Oh, thank God, no, not yet. Hearing's bad enough," she answered with a shudder. "Let me tell you what it is. I've often longed to tell Harry, but I always lack the courage. Now I feel I must tell someone, or I shall go mad. I'm awakened night after night by stealthy footsteps creeping along the gallery and past my door. Then comes another sound, a curious brushing, as of an arm sweeping along the wall behind the head of my bed. Sometimes there's also a clicking sound, as of metal striking metal. The footsteps return after a while, pass my door, and die away down the empty gallery. I sleep in a part of the house right away from Uncle and Sarah Greatrex, so I can't believe the footsteps are theirs. What could either of them want in my wing in the dead of night? There are only 3 of us in the house, and we're all in bed by 10 o'clock.
"And what lies beyond your bedroom?" asked Warburton.
"Only another wing, closed like several others by a cord drawn across, and a notice hung up saying the floor is dangerous to walk upon. No one ever enters those corridors. One can see the windows from the outside. They're all closed and ivy-grown, and some of the trees have been allowed to throw their branches almost onto the roof."
"Does the sound always come at the same time, and every night?"
asked the puzzled Harry. Knowing more of the lake house than most people, he felt utterly at a loss to find an explanation for his sweetheart's weird experiences. "I don't hear it every night, but very often. Perhaps it comes every night, but doesn't always awaken me. I've heard it about midnight, and as late as 3 o'clock in the morning. I've never heard it by day, though I've sat in my room sewing for hours in utter silence. The footsteps are so soft and stealthy, they make me horribly afraid."
"And you've never mentioned the matter to Mr. Thorpe?" asked Warburton.
"Oh, never. If you knew Uncle, you'd understand why. I spoke to Mrs. Greatrex about the ghost story connected with the house, and asked her if she'd ever heard or seen anything. She was very sarcastic and disagreeable.
"I've seen nothing worse than myself," was her only reply.
"You'll have to confront that ghost, Letty." It was Mrs. Davenant who spoke. There was an expression of startled excitement on her face, and her voice was sharp and firm. "What you hear is no ghost, but a creature of flesh and blood. You must face it courageously, and lay your very natural fears to rest."
"Mrs. Davenant is right. It's the only thing to do," urged Harry. "You needn't fear an ordinary human being, darling. It's certainly either Geoffrey or Sarah Greatrex, and you know the worst of both."
Letty was unconvinced. "What could either of them be doing there at such an hour?" she argued miserably. "And why shouldn't they come by day if they're human?"
"That we can't tell. You know how peculiar Geoffrey Thorpe is. I've never known you to lack courage, darling. I've seen this very day how you confronted your uncle by the lake. Make up your mind to throw open your door the next time you hear the footsteps, and you may take my word for it, you'll see nothing worse than Geoffrey Thorpe or Sarah Greatrex."
"Oh, I will try to be courageous enough. But you can't think how nerve-racking the mystery is," the girl assured him, and there were tears in her voice. "There's something ominous and secretive in the whole atmosphere of the house. I feel as if it hid some awful tragedy."
"It probably does," thought Warburton, but he did not say so. I agree with Mrs. Davenant that the footsteps are human. May I make a suggestion? Take a candle and examine as carefully as you can the flooring of the closed corridor which runs beyond your room. Do not pass the barrier, but see if you can detect any sign of recent footsteps on the flooring. I suppose the corridor isn't carpeted."
"Oh, no," answered Letty. "It's black oak and covered with dust."
"Good, then that makes it all the easier for you. I don't say that my suggestion unravels the mystery, but if you discover signs of footsteps having passed that way, you can be pretty sure they are the human footsteps you so often hear. It will give you more courage to open your door and confront the owner of the footsteps. Possibly Mr. Thorpe is a somnambulist. He may be walking in his sleep, in which case it would be well to use caution and not awaken him. In any case, come in and have tea with us tomorrow, and let me know what you've discovered by the aid of the candle. You may hear nothing tonight, but I want to help you all I can. It will surprise me very much if you do not report distinct marks on the dusty floor of that corridor. Compare it with the other corridors that are closed, and you'll soon see the difference."
His quiet confidence was infinitely grateful to Letty's nervous fears. Whilst listening to the low, quiet voice, she felt capable of the most heroic behaviour, but she knew how different she would feel when away from his mental support and alone in the ghostly, hushed atmosphere of the lake-house. However, she gave her promise to follow his instructions and to strive for sufficient courage to open her door at the most dreaded moment. "Say a little prayer for me," she whispered in Warburton's ear as he rose to take his leave, and the warm pressure of his handshake and the answering glance of his deep dark eyes gave assurance that her petition would be granted. End of chapter 15.